Chapter 13. Night started in an Italian immigrant family's living room. He made sure he received his customary $50 retainer up front. He made sure they departed promptly. The terrified couple left him to his devices. Jack opened a leather satchel and arranged very specific items in a very specific order on the floor, a figure-8 design. He snapped a finger and there was flame which engulfed his entire hand. Performing an experimental ritual on his own design, Jack's voice was low and angry, growling words not uttered by a human in over 1,000 years. He crossed his arms in front of his face, closed his eyes. He lowered his arms slowly. The room dimmed. Light drained. The room grew darker the lower he brought his hands. They uncrossed and came to a rest at his side. Jack concentrated. It was pitch black in the room. A vacuum. No sound. The only light was from Jack's fist, a small torch. He focused, then abruptly snapped his fingers, extinguishing his fist and opening his eyes. The living room was back to normal. Cramped, old, musty, lonely, and tired. Jack leered around, waiting. The specter appeared from the hallway, semi-translucent. He could see it. It could not see him. It was a young girl, dark eyes, dead eyes. She walked in a figure-8 around the ritual talismans he had set, then headed to the stairwell. Good. This should be easy. Jack put on his fedora and lit a smoke. He followed the ghost outside to the cobble streets. Only a carriage or two this time of night, even downtown. Jack stared up at the gaslight for a moment, listened. On the new highway pass, he could hear some motor cars, but essentially all was still during this witching hour. In the distance, the old skyline, the Empire State Building, still being constructed, taking forever. For God's sake, are they ever going to be done with that thing? The spirit was making its way across the street to Central Park. Jack closed his trench coat to the code, kept pace. He followed her through a grove, and she emerged on another street, almost dead. Jack watched a checkered taxicab on its late rounds pass right through her. She entered into an alley. He tossed the cigarette down, closing in on her. They were behind a restaurant. The ghost began to glow, illuminating the darkened enclosure. It was wet and dank and dangerous in this place, lit unnaturally. Jack watched the specter walk into a closet, a big blue box by a dumpster, a storage room for cops, or something. It said police box. He reached for the door when a man emerged, from the inside. Jack kept a step away, remembering his cloaking spell, invisibility. The man from the blue box peered around suspiciously, bent down and picked up a coin, stood again. He was tall, had brown curly hair, dressed very Victorian, old and British. His eyes passed right over Jack. Then he spun on a heel and walked out of the alley. Jack immediately looked inside the box. It was a giant church. Or something like a church. Enormous. Gothic. Ancient. Was this some secret entrance to an old seminary? Jack put that on the back burner as he tried to figure out where the hell the ghost went. He opted to follow the man from the blue box. The Victorian stranger dropped a coin into a beggar's cup, then walked off into the darkness. In the cup, Jack could see the coin was glowing, emanating strange blue energy. Jack took off his fedora, ran his fingers through his hair. He pulled out his silver, monogrammed flask and took a healthy belt. He thought he couldn't be surprised. In fact, he was intrigued. Jack put a cigarette in his mouth, lit it with his fist. He looked down at the coin, focused on the coin, concentrating. He felt his third eye open. The beggar became very still. Jack burned a vision into the coin, its future, and he watched. In precisely 27 minutes, a drunkard will spill the contents of the can into the street and stumble into an oncoming carriage. He would be crushed by the two heavy horses as the coins make their way to the other side of the street. A man with a prostitute will shamefully make his way to a sleazy, per-hour hotel. The coin rolls to his feet. He will pick it up, pocket it. Hours later, he spends it at a bar. The chubby bartender tosses it into a till, which is remarkably untouched and undisturbed during an alcohol-fueled riot which nearly destroys the bar. The police take the coin, and the other valuables in the till, to evidence. It doesn't stay there long. 13 hours later, a fed-up old warhorse, who'd been in a uniform almost his whole life, was being fired. He decided to take a little back that belonged to him, till included. His retirement came much quicker as his motorcar stalled on a railroad crossing. He vaguely remembers someone telling him that a Model T was a waste of money. The train annihilated the car. Till and coins will explode into the distance. Hours later, a farmer and his son will pick up the detritus and the coin of the till. Day passes on to evening. The farmer and son will make their way back to the city late at night. Coins drop into the street. One coin will roll over gently down a hill in a particular way, ricocheting down a dark alley, coming to rest in front of a big blue box. A man will pick up the coin. A Victorian man will stroll into the darkness after he tosses the coin into a beggar's cup. Jack shook his head of the vision, extinguished his fist, and retracted his footsteps back to the blue cop closet. He knew two certainties. 1. This British man from the blue box was trapped. Cursed, perhaps. 2. This was going to work to his advantage. He was curious. Jack gingerly entered the blue box, which opened up into a strange cathedral. It was dark and menacing, very open and drafty. Far off, there was some furniture, antique. A stairway in the distance. In the center was a wrought iron podium. A blue crystal was protruding from the center. Jack noticed a book sitting on a pedestal with light shining on it. Suddenly, there was an ear-piercing shriek, a loud cacophony inside his head. He grabbed the book and ran. Outside, he sped through the alley to the street and back into the open night. He cut across the park, retracing his route. When Jack felt less compromised, he infiltrated back into the apartment to gather his dark magic objects. He opened the window and stepped to the ledge, getting a good look at the book in the light of the silky yellow moon. It was imposed with the symbols of eternity, a figure 8, depending on how you looked at it. It didn't look it, but he knew. It was old. Jack stepped off the ledge and floated 5 stories down the curb. When his feet slapped the street, he slid the book into his satchel, lit a smoke with his fist. The book was about temporal warlocks. Chronomancy. He adjusted his fedora, thought to himself, paradox sorcery. Jack Valentine was certainly curious about paradox sorcery.